I'm Ray Addison. Headliners is coming right up, but first here are your news headlines. Our top story tonight, the Deputy Prime Minister says the evacuation of British nationals from Sudan will end on Saturday. Oliver Dowden says the decision was made after a decrease in the number of requests for help. So far, British forces have rescued more than 1,500 people.
What we have seen over the past 24 hours or so is a significant decline in the British nationals coming forward. Now, that's what you'd expect. It's what's happened with other countries. So what we are saying now is that people should expect within the next 24 hours, so by 6 o'clock UK time tomorrow, for us to cease those flights.
Richard Sharp has resigned as chairman of the BBC after a report found that he breached the rules for public appointments. The review says he failed to properly disclose his involvement in facilitating an £800,000 loan guarantee for Boris Johnson. Mr Sharp says the breach was inadvertent and he's quitting to prioritise the interests of the broadcaster. Following calls from Labour that he should have been sacked, the Prime Minister says the right process was followed.
This is about doing things properly and professionally, and when concerns are raised, it's right that there is a proper process, an independent process, that we don't prejudge, we allow it to carry on, establish the facts of what happened, reach a conclusion. That's happened. Richard Sharp has resigned, but it's right that we do these things properly and professionally. I think most people will think that's the right thing to do.
Scotland's police watchdog has launched an investigation into the death of a pregnant teacher. The announcement comes after police found the body of her missing partner at a reservoir near Glasgow. Officers had been looking for 36-year-old David Yates after Morel Sturrock was killed at her home on Tuesday. She was 29 weeks pregnant and her unborn baby did not survive. Mr Yates's death is not being treated as suspicious. Unions representing teachers and head teachers in England say they'll take coordinated strike action in the autumn after accusing the government of wanting education on the cheap. The General Secretaries of 4 unions say they'll now work together in their long-running dispute over pay. That's after they rejected the government's offer of a one-off payment of £1,000 and an average pay rise of 4.5% next year. The National Association of Head Teachers says the decision sends a clear signal to the government that the dispute is not going away. And health workers belonging to the GMB union have accepted the government's 5% pay offer. GMB officials say they'll now vote to accept the offer at a meeting of the NHS Staff Council next week. Health Secretary Steve Barclay says the deal recognises the outstanding job that NHS staff do, whilst protecting the government's commitment to halving inflation. On TV, online, on DAB+ radio and on TuneIn 2, this is GB News. Time now for Headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Nick Dixon and it's going to be a great show because I'm joined by the very funny comedian and all-around nice guy, Paul Cox. And Lewis. So, just kidding, Lewis. We all love Lewis. Look, it's a great honour. Last night I was on with Graham Linehan, creator of Father Ted, The IT Crowd, Black Books, and tonight I'm honoured to be on with the creator of the 2023 official Gout calendar.
Gout
there it is.
Oh, is it?
He had it ready. Uric acid is more than gout. Gout is more than uric acid.
Yeah.
And hopefully you'll put that away now for the rest of the show. Paul, how are you doing?
I'm great. It always feels like I've won a competition to be here with Lewis and yourself, big dog.
Gout calendar.
Yeah.
Gout calendar 23. Available where, Lewis?
It's we're going to be available online.
Let's just move on. Let's have a look at the front pages. So, The Guardian goes with BBC chair quits as row over Tory sleaze grows. The Daily Telegraph has surgeons operate once every fortnight. I'm not an expert, doesn't seem that much to me. The Times, NHS strike poses threat to Great Ormond Street. The Daily Mail has M&S and Victoria Beckham back our tourist tax fight. No idea. The Eye revealed Putin's top mercenaries are fighting in Sudan. And finally, The Mirror, a new king for our times. And that's about the monarchy sort of slimming down. All right, let's get into it. So let's start with The Guardian, Lewis. And I think Gary Lineker's been giving his opinion again, not like him.
Yeah, well, he should be giving his opinion, and he's basically saying that the government should not pick the next head of the next chairman of the BBC, which is not the same as the director. I don't understand the difference between these two people. All I know is this: is the BBC stands for Big Brother Communications System.
Shots fired early on.
I'm gonna fire it. You know what it is? It's like he says the government shouldn't pick it. Well, who should pick it? Who owns the thing? In theory, the people own the thing. Then it has to be the government.
Yeah. So just to be clear, so the headline is BBC chair quits, which is obviously the general story. But we wanted to focus for a minute on Gary Lineker, who's tweeted here saying the BBC chairman should not be selected by the government of the day. Not now, not ever. And some people, including Mr. Lee Anderson, have pointed out that Alistair Campbell did the exact same thing by selecting Gavin Davis back in the day.
Yeah, this just happens every time. And he won't be saying the same thing if there's a Labour Prime Minister choosing the chair of the BBC next time. I mean,
Are you saying Gary Lineker won't be objective and fair?
I don't think Gary Lineker will be objective. He's all about, same as his playing career, Gary Lineker is all about the easy tap-ins. His football career was about hanging around the goal, tapping things in. And his political career, which this is, by the way, is all about easy tap-ins. It's very easy for Gary Lineker to say these things.
Although he's wrong in a general sense as a person, he's not actually wrong here. I mean, it shouldn't be chosen by the government.
No, there should not be a BBC, period. It's state
really?
Yes.
Trust Lewis to up the stakes early on.
If you think this is wrong, I'll apologize. I don't know. I'm an American. In America, we have very little state enterprise, whatever it is. And it's like people are thinking it should be objective. It's not objective. It's owned, operated by the Big Brother communications industry.
Well, that's what you just called it. But to an American, the BBC must seem ultra-communist. Like there's some old tin of beans that just says beans or something, you know, or those old communist cars where they just had one car. It is a kind of anachronistic thing, isn't it?
It isn't anachronistic, because there's no place in the modern world with this much...
You mean it is?
It is, I guess it is. It's not anachronistic.
I'm surprised you haven't been on Question Time, Lewis.
The state should never own the broadcasting.
No,
go on.
I think there's a bigger story here about why we pay our licence fee and how you can take old ladies to the court if they don't pay theirs. It used to be a sense of pride. Nick and I, we grew up in this country at similar sort of ages. Nick is younger than I am, I like to hasten to add. However, it was a source of pride for me to say that I was a BBC kid. So I would watch CBBC, as it's called now. I'd watch the BBC after school instead of ITV, because that was for lesser people. Yeah. That was the only way on a council estate you could rise yourself above. But the BBC has become this kind of... It's a stigma now.
Yeah, because they struggle so much to be objective, and it is a very hard task to be truly neutral. I mean, what you have now is basically normal people think the BBC is kind of lefty, or you could be more specific and say it's kind of establishment, Remainer liberals, and then you have these nutters on the left that claim it's a sort of Tory-run thing, you know, the Corbynites, which is kind of an insane view, probably Gary Lineker's view. But obviously, it's not great if the Tories are picking the head, or if Alistair Campbell or anyone's doing it.
No, I disagree with you, because you're focusing on the wrong thing. You're focusing on, is it Labour or Tory? Is it left or is it right? It isn't. It's owned by the big state. The deep state controls the whole thing.
Lewis, I totally agree in that I think it should be, you should pay a subscription like Netflix or anything else, let them compete in the real world, right?
No, but why should they even own anything?
No, just let them be a normal company like anyone.
No, like ITV.
It can't even be a private company.
Yeah, because it's, unless we sell it to somebody, we should,
Why can't it be a company, though, like Netflix and Amazon that you just pay for if you want?
Because it's owned by the government right now.
If you take that away...
Yeah, so then it would be a private company.
OK, so you're OK with that? Yeah. Just to clarify, we want to get Lewis's stance right.
Let me just say to the people out there, I apologise for this, really, because I'm not from this country. It's totally immoral to me. It's like your royal family. Was that a step too far, too?
I love that this is the thing you've apologised for. You did not the show the other night that we don't talk about, but this. OK, so let's go on to the Telegraph before I get us in trouble, Paul.
Yeah, surgeons operate only once every fortnight. That's the risk because of a lack of staff. Now, you're right to say right at the beginning there, this seems not enough, and not enough time being dedicated by surgeons. There's too much time being committed by surgeons, not enough time by surgeons. But this is about their staff, because a surgeon can't operate alone. I mean, Lewis, if he was a surgeon, he could operate alone. No doubt he would. There'd be all sorts of things going on. But what's going on here is that there just isn't the teams around them. And I don't know if it's because they're always on strike, but it feels to me as if that's probably too cynical, and it's much more about the fact that there's just not enough people joining the NHS because it's a terrible place to work.
Right, and surgeons are saying, they want to operate, but they're facing these bureaucratic demands, so they can't actually do it, and they end up basically lazier than comedians, Lewis.
Yeah, well,
No way.
you know what? First of all, we need fewer surgeons. And we need more nurses. We could probably get by with 90% less doctors.
You're basing this on...
Basing my own personal experience. We need people in the hospital to take care of the sick people because their families won't take care of them. There's no love in the world, so they need to go to the hospital to have their bottoms wiped and to have them being fed when they're sick.
Okay.
I don't think they need doctors, and I'll tell you something else. Let's go a step further. Is that when the state owns the hospitals, you're going to have these kind of problems. The state is unfit for doing anything.
Full-on anarcho-capitalism from Lewis Schaefer. Lewis, speaking of wiping bottoms, there's a story about Biden being very old on the front page.
Well, he is old, and this woman who is basically trying to, her name is Nikki Haley, I think she's the governor of...
She's one of the Republican candidates as well.
Yeah, she's a Republican candidate for president in America, and she says that Biden has only 5 years to live, and I actually looked it up based on, what do they call it, actuarial charts or something? Actuarial charts. He basically has only 5 years to live. He's an 80-year-old man. Even if he was healthy, he would only live for about seven years. But because he's so sick, the guy's going to die. And
The whole point of this story is to say that Biden is old.
Yeah, they want to bear. Yeah, they're basically. It's not even a dog whistle to people. They're basically reminding people that the guy's going to die. He's doing a bad job as it is, and then someone worse is going to be in.
It's Biden's old, but it's also Nikki Haley trying to make her mark. The other day, she sort of criticised DeSantis and said Disney are welcome in South Carolina, which was an absurd thing to say because Disney is this awful woke company, and so she's kind of coming at DeSantis from the left. But now she's trying to say, "Oh, I'm pretty tough though. Look at me attack Biden." I mean, that's my take. What do you think, Paul?
Well, I mean, very quickly on DeSantis. I mean, he didn't do anything wrong in terms of... You can't have a company within a state that's bigger or above the law of the state. You can't have that at all. It doesn't matter what state you're in. With regards to Biden, I don't think you should have the battle on the age thing because Donald Trump's his competitor and he's of a similar age. He's just cognitively a lot sharper.
Yeah, well, we've got to move on, but just as a note, Biden's not doing anything. We all know this. It's the Biden administration. Victor Davis Hanson described Biden as the scab on the far left wound. So, little image for you there. What about the Times, Lewis?
The Times is the NHS strike poses a threat to Great Ormond Street because they, I think, strike tomorrow night. Would that be Saturday night? The nurses are going to go on strike, and while there are sick kids, and as I said before, we need nurses, and if they're going to go on strike, it's obviously going to affect the unless they let regular people come into the hospital and do the work, which I don't think they're going to do. Kids are going to be affected negatively.
Yeah, any take on this, Paul?
Well, my patience is running thin with all the striking, I have to be honest. I mean, I was going to say I can't chuck us all into that bucket, but I love the NHS. I love what our teachers do, but my patience is running entirely thin. They need to get back to what they are paid to do, essentially. And now I sound like a massive Tory in saying that, and I'm not afraid to say it because they should absolutely... I mean, these are kids' lives. And the idea that 5% here, 5% there is what we're arguing over here when kids are dying seems ridiculous.
Do you agree with the idea that they should be not permitted to strike, but they should be paid more in the first place?
I find this really difficult. I'm always conflicted with this because I believe in the right to strike. It's their only means to contest what's going on. However, there has to come a point and you have to have a skeleton service available so that people don't die.
OK, well, that's it for part one. But coming up, teachers' strikes. Speaking of strikes, and it's Britain's first women-only tower block as well. And London's rent goes up along with its crime. See you in 2 minutes.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GBNews because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today. Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Nick Dixon, still here with the affable Paul Cox and whatever the opposite of affable is, Lewis Schaefer. I'm sorry, Lewis. I wrote it and I've just committed to it. Let's do the Times now. And I think we need a new segment on this show called Who's Striking Today? And this time it's the teachers, Paul.
Yeah, the 4 main education unions have announced they have plans to coordinate their strikes now. Strike action could lead to the closure of almost every school in England this autumn. So not this week, this month, which it feels like it's already happened this week, by the way. And I'll come to that in a sec. But this autumn. So there's no plan here. Unless you do as they say, they are going to disrupt and disrupt more. So I said before the break, I'm getting very cynical about this now. There was a strike yesterday, so Thursday, and there's going to be a strike on Tuesday. They seem to have planned this right round the bank holiday weekend, which suits both the teachers. And I know that you're going to be out on strike, but you're not working, are you? Let's face it. And it also suits the unions because it disrupts whatever plans people have over the bank holiday weekend. I think it's cynical. I'm not so worried about my cynicism now. It used to be very controversial to say, "Oh, I don't support these strikes." I no longer support these strikes.
You're just out and proud as an anti-striker.
Well, because there's a half decent offer on the table.
Right. And also, I love this thing of like the 4 unions coming together. It's kind of like the Power Rangers of socialism. Lewis, you're sort of quite anti-state, I've picked up in the first section, so I'm guessing you're not pro-strikes.
Well, I am pro-strikes.
It's a bit different, I guess, isn't
Well,
it?
I'm going to tell you what I believe in. I believe that every single person should have the right to strike.
Okay.
I believe that. And I also believe that every single organization, whether it's the government or a private business, should have the right to fire these people. Right. I believe it. Let there be. It's what's good for the goose is good for the gander. But let's face the facts. This country, every single story is about state control. It's the centralization of everything. There's too much centralization. In America, the greatest country in the world.
No, I used to think it was. I'm very patriotic now. I tend to think England is, because we invented you anyway.
Yeah.
But it's between the two. But even though our country's sort of finished, maybe I'm sentimental. But when I said you're probably against the strikes, it's because I suppose I was thinking you're not a lefty. But then again, you could be pro-strike, anti-government. So that would also make sense.
Well, I'm not anti-government. I am against this incredible. First of all, I'm against the incredible centralization that the government is in control of every single school in England. In America, we have local school districts that have 10,000 people here, 5,000 people there. So it's no great, and every state is different.
There's no federal system across the schools.
There's no federal state, just because you hadn't. But the most important thing is that this inflation thing was caused
by lockdown.
by lockdown.
Here we go.
Yeah.
And diabetes.
And gout. And the thing is, I agree. I mean, the schools also undermine themselves a little bit. I mean, when they prove that you could just do it with videos at home. I mean, if I'm looking at this going, hang on, the teachers are striking. Schools are in chaos anyway. We've learned you can just do videos. They didn't seem to care about providing an education. Mind you, it wasn't really their fault. It was kind of it was the teachers' union's fault, though, kind of, wasn't it? I mean, the government made the decision, but the teachers' unions pressured them into it. So I just tend to think homeschool at this point.
Well, I mean, talking of homeschooling, we did learn something during the pandemic, and it wasn't that we don't need teachers, it's that teachers offer us a very valuable service to each of our communities. They are better at teaching than most parents are, for sure. Basically, we can palm them off.
Okay.
And I just think, for balance, that teaching and teachers is admirable.
Okay.
But this strike isn't.
All right, fair enough. Well, we'll move on. But I went a bit farther. I went full Lewis Schaefer. I'm like, ban all teaching. I'm against schools. Let's go full homeschooling. All right, let's do the Daily Mail now. And good news for people who think the rents in London are a bit too low, Lewis.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting. They've just released this report. It was done by Rightmove, and it says that the average rents outside of London is about £1,200 a month to rent a flat, and inside London it's £2,500 a month, which means that people are willing to pay 2.5 times as much to live in London, because there's the perception that London is better than it is. And this is just one more inflation story which was caused by lockdown.
I see what you mean. I mean, it has got absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I'm just debating whether to... I've got this weird thing where I own a small percentage of a flat, and you get into the situation... I had a leak the other day, and I'm calling them up to fix it, and they're going, no, it's not our responsibility.
Oh, of course.
It's the communal boiler people. And they go, it's not ours. It's the person who makes the heat interface unit. And they go, it's not ours. And I went round and round, so I was like... They checkmated me until it can't be fixed. I'm like, and I just thought, I might just rent again, because then at least someone has to come round. But it's so competitive now, isn't it, Paul? And it's so expensive. And people are like even writing CVs to get into flats we covered the other day. Because the rental market, the supply and demand is all off.
Yeah. Your situation, by the way, it sounds like nobody can legally fix your problem, which is much more of a worry, isn't it? Like, you couldn't go and pay for it because it isn't your responsibility, it just happens to be no one else's.
Who would I even pay? And they couldn't even tell me who I would even pay. It's insanity.
What's really interesting about this, if you look in percentages, the average salary in London's about 35k. It's less by a similar proportional percentage outside of London, but it both works out to be about 90-odd% of the average rent. So at 35k, you're taking home about 2.5 grand, right? If your rent's 2.5 grand, what else are you going to do? It's just preposterous. This is why you've got middle earners sharing houses and accommodation in central London. Because you know, I once stayed in a house share with lots of middle earners in Canada Water about 5 or 6 years ago, and any one of those people could have afforded to rent or probably buy a house outside of London, but that's not even possible anymore. It's just complete madness. This sounds like the end of times, the end of an empire.
No, it isn't that. It isn't that. It's the problem with Britain. It's unbelievably centralised. Number one. It's the centralisation. Everything is in London.
Everyone take a drink every time Lewis says centralised tonight.
And I'm going to tell you something to the people out there, because we got a lot of people who are watching this who do not live in London. London sucks the life out of this country.
Well, I see what you mean.
And I live in London, and I love London, so don't hate me.
We've got a big problem with building enough houses. That's
no, that is not the reason why.
It's Immigration?
I guarantee you,
centralisation of everything.
If they move the government offices, it's cheap. There are places that are dirt cheap. Doncaster and Burnley and Barnley and Barnsley.
Barnley could be a place. I don't know if it is.
You were close. Right. One didn't exist. And Hobbiton and but yeah, okay. We'll move on. And sorry to bring up my leak thing, guys. I'm so angry about it. Basically, I was on hold with the company that manages the building so long. I actually worked out the chords to the hold music. That's a true story. I'm a musician. Let's do the Times now. And the rapid decline of the West is starting to affect property, Paul.
I do think we're at the end of an empire here. It does start to feel like it. I mean, I know this story it lends itself to that as well. Wealthy investors are leaving the West. Basically, wealthy investors are leaving people like London and New York because, I mean, this is, by the way, this is being said by Nick Candy and his brother, who are the two Christian brothers. It is important that I mention their faith, that built One Hyde Park. If you don't know what that is, it's essentially probably the most expensive piece of real estate in London, or it was at one point. And one of the reasons they're leaving is because of the high crime rates, but not just that, because people are being taught transgender issues in school, as a bit of a buzz thing to say. However, what is happening is that if you are mildly conservative in any way, or traditionalist in any way, you are now feeling more and more isolated the closer you are to a metropolitan city, because none of the things that we were taught to be true exist anymore.
Yeah, well, he's done very well, this Nick Candy. I mean, he sold his, or the asking price, at least, for his flat was 175 million. He goes out with Holly Valance, the beautiful actress and singer. Wonder what she saw in him. And although she's now 39, so who knows? Maybe he'll move on, Lewis. I don't know. I don't want to speculate.
You move on.
But the interesting thing here is he's saying that crime is now so bad that investors don't want to invest in property. They don't want to be in London. Isn't this similar to the point Andrew Tate made? If you don't know, he's a great philosopher. And he said that we have the authoritarianism in the West now, but we don't have the safety, at least in Dubai, whichever country you want to cite, or Dubai's not a country, but you know what I mean? They at least have low crime, even if it's authoritarian. Any comment on any of this, Lewis?
Well, I think he sounds like a typical GB News viewer, an older, grumpy man. I'm not saying anything bad about GB News. I love GB News.
You slipped up there, Lewis. Lewis's last show.
Last show. Is that he's I don't know how old the guy is, but I think he's probably in his 60s or 70s or something. Probably whatever he is.
He's 50, and he's a young 50.
Oh, he's 50. Oh, yeah, he says 50.
They're basically like London's Tate brothers.
Yeah, well, here is the point. The point is that as we get older, we miss the things that used to be. So, but also,
like the truth.
That's
and
not
science.
Really the point, is it? The point is that London's become not a good place to invest because of crime.
Well, things go up and they go down, and I'm not sure about crime. I don't see London as being...
Especially in Barnsley.
Okay. Things go up and down.
I say Barnsley.
Yeah, but don't worry. Let's move on. We're live.
Barnsley. You were very close. All right, well, let's move on and do The Guardian now with a story about women's-only tower blocks, which is a great idea, really, isn't it? The only downside is all the light bulbs are out, the jars are unopened, and a single medium-sized spider is terrorising the entire building. Lewis, I apologise.
I do not approve of that.
Lewis wrote that one.
I don't want to be in the same room as that.
I was going to say you were there, but your jokes would never have that structure, would they? Clean structure.
It was a beautiful structure. They'd have that level of hatred. They'd have the feeling. You think lacked a bit of feeling.
Right.
It was made up in structure. But there are plans afoot, or they're approved for Britain's first women's-only tower block. And this is a scheme for 102 flats in a 15-story tower in England. And basically, this is an example of the death of love.
I knew it. I knew you'd get that.
You know why?
The death of gout.
Not just putting women in this block, because you can't just put women in the block forever, because those women have boy kids, and the boy kids inherit the flat, and so eventually there'll be men there, men moving in. But because small flats, pay attention to this, small flats mean that people do not have children, and the way you control population is by putting people into tiny, tiny flats. And this company, they can't build any more student housing, which is the ultimate in small flats, okay? But the flats that they're building are so small, so these are the smallest flats, just for one woman.
Well, let me ask, Paul, I mean, the scheme is for 102 flats to be rented all by single women. Where are they going to put all the cats? I mean, I don't think about it. Statistically, there'll be about 510 cats. I've worked it out. 5 cats per woman. That's 510.
I was going to make a really serious point. I just couldn't. I mean, brilliant. This is absolutely wonderful. This, obviously, like all of these things, it starts off with good intentions, but makes absolutely zero logical sense in the end. Yeah, by the way, they say that you need to be a single woman, I assume without children. It doesn't say, though. However, men will be able to live there if they become a partner of the tenant, which is just the same as almost every other single-parent flat situation across council estates in the UK.
Exactly, and they've undermined the whole thing, because I don't mind, women's only block, fine, but they're not sticking to their own rule. They've got, if you have an adult child who's a man, they can be there, and you can have a transgender person, and so they can be there, and they're saying, oh, we'll be safe in this block. Well, will you? Because obviously not all trans people, but we've seen cases where you're not safe. So what's the point of it? They've undermined it, being too liberal about it.
Are you familiar? In New York, they used to have these buildings built for young women in the 1920s and teens, whatever, women coming into the city, but it's sort of like back in the day when people used to have to wear ties to go to restaurants, and you'd rock up without a tie, and they would say, "Here, just put this tie on." Right, just to get through the rules. They don't care about, and that's what they're going to do with these men. They're going to say to the man, "Listen, here's a dress. You want to come into the building?"
Yeah, they'll come into the building. Yeah, I'd like to see also a men's only block. They'll probably descend into chaos.
Oh, it'd be carnage,
J.G. Ballard sort of high-rise or like a prison system. I don't know. Go on.
Just basically, what they're trying to do is make a safe haven, right?
Yeah.
They're not achieving it. This is just nonsense. If you're going to do it right.
All right, good. Well, I think probably all three of us are going to get in trouble for that segment, but definitely me. That's all for part 2, but coming up, the King's woke coronation, Meghan Markle gets a new agent. What a relief. And Princess Diana appears in a slice of ham. See you after the break.
Yeah.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us 4, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. Let's get straight into it with the Times. And apparently the King's coronation will be a beacon of diversity and inclusion. The only thing it won't include is me watching it, Paul. See what I did there?
Yeah, absolutely. King's coronation to be a beacon of inclusion and diversity. Essentially, they're trying to set this up to be a representation of modern Britain. And therefore, if it is, it needs to be a huge fight / protest / strike, followed by a load of drink and a super injunction, because that's what would represent Britain at the moment. I mean, it's difficult to argue with this. Why am I doing Schaefer hands? I'm doing Schaefer hands. Am I permitted to do Schaefer hands? Thank you. But this, you know, I mean, it's difficult to argue with this because we are, you know, particularly if you take London and our metropolitan cities, and even some of the smaller towns now, everything is very diverse. So perhaps it should be, perhaps it should be represented and it should be inclusive. I can see what the King is doing. It's very much in tune with Charles III's view of the world. But it just feels like it's been rammed down our throat again. I could just see the people I know are going to love watching this feeling that they're alienated.
Yeah, I mean...
Which is an awful thing to say, but I can see it happening.
It's obviously not about different races or anything like that, but Lady Benjamin here is saying that to be selected to carry the sovereign sceptre with Dove Don't know what that means, which represents spirituality, equity and mercy. Equity, isn't that like a weird, woke, communist word? What's that doing in the coronation? What do you think, Lewis?
I think it's irrelevant, the whole thing. I think people, I've spoken to a number of people. I'm going to a coronation party, which is, I thought it was a coronation party, in my housing block, whatever. And I was told it was just a party, even though it was on the day they were doing it. What?
Just coincidental.
Yeah, no, not cool. Well, they said, well, let's have a party, but there was going to be anyway. Here's the point. The point is,
here's the point.
The latest polls show that people don't like Prince Charles.
King.
The king.
He's our king, Lewis. Come on. Americans coming over here, demoting our kings.
You know what?
Outrageous.
I don't like the monarchy.
I do.
But that's me, because I'm an American. But I think if you're going to have a monarchy, more people should like it in this country.
I want the monarchy, but I'm a bit disappointed, like lots of us, that King Charles is a bit woke. I saw an interesting tweet thread that was saying, well, the eco-warriors should like Charles because he's so eco-friendly or whatever, he's concerned about climate stuff, but yet they are complaining. And then he was saying the right should like him because it's an over 1,000-year-old tradition and it's kind of base. And I'm thinking, well, it's not really. So everyone's unhappy.
We were spoilt by Queen Elizabeth II because she was so good at treading the line.
Yeah.
And she did it in a non-supercilious way. She made everybody feel inclusive.
Absolutely. So, sticking with the times, let's have a look at Meghan Markle, and she has a new agent. Maybe now she'll get the attention she deserves, Lewis.
Yeah, maybe she should be made queen. But she's like amazing. She is a
That'd
queen.
Be awful.
She is. Let me tell you something about King Charles. The reason why the next king will be a good king, but this one, I get the feeling that British people don't like him because he wants to be king. And you're not allowed. It's a duty. It's an honor. It's a privilege, but it's not something you want to become. The Queen did not want to become queen. This guy is gagging at it. He wants to do it. And the people are looking at him saying, we don't want you to be king. If you want to be king, we want someone else. Anyway, so
there's something in there that Queen Elizabeth should have reluctantly taken on as a young person. It was unexpected, and there was a sort of
I don't think he's despised, though. I don't think he's despised.
No, but by Lewis, clearly.
I don't despise him. I just don't think he's liked, and I think he's also a man, and this is a woman's world.
Wow.
So
chuck that in.
So Meghan Markle got a new Hollywood talent agency because she wants to become famous, and she can't lie.
She succeeded.
Hopefully she'll get there one day.
She wants to stay famous, and the fact is, her husband is just like such a beta male.
Well, yeah, not exactly breaking news. But the thing, Paul, the thing that surprised me here, I mean, not surprised me, but confused me, let's say, is she's with a Hollywood agent here, massive agent, but they say they won't represent her for acting. Acting will not be the focus. What else does she do? I mean, is there an agency just for complaining about racism? I mean, what else is there? I guess she's more of a reality star now.
I mean, all power to the agent. Basically, if this person is successful in being Meghan's agent, they're obviously a psychopath. But they should, if they are successful, also they'll probably be up for a Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, the idea of being able to manage Meghan Markle on a day-to-day basis would fill the average person with absolute horror.
It's hellish. Yeah, you're absolutely right. All right, well, let's move on and do the Daily Star. And Princess Diana's face has been seen in a slice of ham. Is the Queen of Hearts now the Queen of Ham, Paul? That's all I had on that one.
Just keep saying ham until I laugh. Woman stunned, Lewis, to see Princess Diana staring back at her from a Tesco slice of ham. Let me tell you something, Nick. She didn't. This story should read, mentally ill woman draws on ham.
How dare you?
Have we got the picture?
So accurate. Have we got it? Yeah, let's have a look. If we don't now, you set us up. It's coming very slowly. There it is.
That's not even Princess Di.
But that's the Daily Star have done an outline of it. That's not the actual.
So she didn't.
There it is. That does look like Diana. Look at that. That's her.
That looks like Princess Leia to me.
She's come back as ham. And I'm not trying to be insensitive, but it just looks a lot like her. I mean, the only thing I'm confused about, since she was with Dodi, right, when she died, and he's Muslim, why has she come back as a pork product?
Oh,
am I looking at it too deeply? Lewis, what do you think?
She looks like Jane Austen. Jane Austen's dad. I think this is the most real story that we're going to have. Because people they're thinking about Princess Diana. At this time, when everyone wants to forget her, it's like the latest statistics.
Oh, we don't want to forget her. I know what you mean.
Well, they would like to forget her. Like the study was done. How many people want Camilla to be queen? and the number was 2%.
Really?
Did you see that?
No, we all love Diana, it's true. And that's why this woman here is saying she wants to preserve this ham. It should be in a museum, and she looks beautiful. I agree. It should be...
Yeah.
I don't know which museum would take the ham, particularly, but...
And more importantly, who would go?
Who would go? I think...
Come on, Nick, let's go see the ham.
Don't underestimate this country. People would queue up near a velvet rope to see a piece of ham. I guarantee that would happen. All right, let's do the Times now. And are robots more polite than doctors, Lewis?
Well, probably... When can you ever see a doctor, really? ChatGPT is better bedside manner than real doctors. Yeah, because they're trained to be nice. I don't think they're... You know, I don't know. I mean, these are two subjects.
You need to see your doctor, Lewis, because you seem to be struggling with the old blood sugar there.
Yeah, I speak to my doctor a lot. She's lovely. My doctors have been amazingly good to me, considering how much I badmouth them.
You think she's lovely, but is she actually a ChatGPT bot? You've been communicating with all this time. You formed a relationship.
Yeah.
It's just a bot.
As long as she
it's like
does,
the movie
as
Her.
long as she does what I want, which is they say doctors are the world's largest placebo.
Oh, really? One thing that surprised me, Paul, I don't know who's emailing their doctor. I don't email my... They're saying, like, you get their emails and they're rude. I'm like, who's emailing with their doctor? Is this like a middle-class thing? Oh, is that...
And you can talk to an NHS doctor.
It's for very needy people.
No, actually, you should always... I shouldn't say this because...
They don't give out their email addresses. We've got to email some receptionist person who then diagnoses you.
Yeah.
And then if you're lucky, it's a bit like trying to see the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
You were always on this path, you're never quite sure what you're going to see, and when you get to the end, there's a little man there who's not sure what he's doing.
The part that shocked me was that 79% of people preferred the AI to the doctor in a blind test.
I don't think they're supposed to be nice doctors, are they? Bedside manner doesn't describe someone who's being nice. There's a very specific type of manner about being bedside manner, isn't there? Which is politely direct.
OK.
But can I just say something? My doctors are unbelievably nice to me.
OK,
because I'm an American.
Important to get that in. All right, let's do the Telegraph now with a story about a left-wing misinformation site, aka Wikipedia, versus government censorship. I don't know who to hate more, Lewis.
Oh, is this Paul? Or I'll talk about it.
Oh, it says Lewis in my thing, but, you know...
I don't mind. Let's go in. Wikipedia could be taken offline in the UK. Now, this is because of the online safety bill, because it's all about content and moderation, you see. Yeah. Whereas Wikipedia is about content that's generally that's not moderated at all. You can essentially update my Wikipedia page, which doesn't yet exist, by the way. Anyone who wants to create one, fill your boots. Just call me Lewis Schaefer's whatever. But you can... The thing about Wikipedia, and it does slightly lean to the left, I would say, you're right, Nick, is that you can essentially write what you like on there, and it's not moderated. It relies on volunteers, and therefore it only gets moderated by the public. The online safety bill just wouldn't allow for that.
I mean, you are totally wrong, Paul, and I think Nick understands this. It is completely moderated. It is left-wing. If you say... It's almost like a British form of moderation. It doesn't have a central authority moderating. It relies on spies and evil people in the community to rat on you.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm not trying to be conspiratorial, but you look up people who are more conservative on the right, and it's always like far right, Nazi, like Lewis Schaefer, like, oh, I've met Lewis, I don't think he is, you know, and it's always like that. It's absolutely awful. I was scared. I thought for this segment I'll just check if I have one right, but mine says I'm a Scottish ITV presenter, so that's way off. It's way off. So I don't know.
You'd make a good one, Nick.
Thank you very much. I'm worried about it because the online safety bill is awful. They're going to, censor everything, but apparently, in reality, anyway. I mean, this is a sort of Steve Allen point, but actually, it probably won't even happen because Wikipedia won't be considered a Category 1 internet provider, and so they won't have to implement all this stuff anyway. So it's a non-story, OK?
A non-story.
So that's it for part 3, but coming up in the final section, why Cleopatra was definitely white, why it's better to be smart than good-looking, and James Corden returns to Britain against our will. See you in 2 minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope? It's very much so. And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. Let's do the Independent and confirmation that Cleopatra was white-skinned. Finally a win for the whites, Lewis.
Well, it's the Egyptians are saying it, and they don't look that white to me. Anyway, I can't believe something's wrong with the world when the Egyptians are fighting to be considered white. That their antiquities minister, Egypt, said that Cleopatra was white-skinned amid Netflix documentary row. Netflix did a documentary. Row. Narrated and produced by Jada Pinkett Smith, that lovely, lovely woman. She's battling, what's her name, Megan.
Take your narrator's name out of my mouth.
Yeah, and she says that because the star that they had was a British woman who was half black. But then once upon a time, they had an Egyptian play Dr. Zhivago, who was a Russian.
Yeah, well, it's complicated, but just to give some update on this story, the actor was complaining, saying everyone was racist, because people were saying, well, Cleopatra wasn't black, because it is actually a documentary. It's not fiction. It'd be weird in fiction, but in documentaries it's even stranger. And they're pointing out Cleopatra was born in Alexandria in the Ptolemaic dynasty to Greek descent, so she would have had Hellenistic, and they're sort of gaslighting. I find this bit I don't like. When someone says here, the director actually says, why shouldn't Cleopatra be a melanated sister, and why do some people need Cleopatra to be white? Well, it's not really that they need it, it's just what she was, Paul.
Yeah, and I think we go right back to the root of this story. It was a racism row. And, and there was no racism, essentially. I don't believe that there was. However, this is all rather nonsense, isn't it? It's all rather nonsense because it's only important in terms of the culture war. Outside of the culture war, it means nothing. Cleopatra was clearly on the light side. So if it was a documentary and they wanted to be true to the story, she probably should have been played by a light-skinned person.
You meant, because when you said the light side, I thought you meant in the Star Wars.
I've got the two stories mixed up. However, it's still, to me, it's of no value. Whoever was to win this argument wins nothing.
Right.
Well, no, it's actually a very important story. I think changed my mind. It's a very important story, because this story is not about, this story doesn't take place in Egypt. It takes place in America, where the Americans, and I understand this totally, who came from Africa, and they lost their culture and a lot of their culture and a lot of their history, and they don't have that much culture. They do have culture, the tremendous culture, but they feel like it's been taken away from them. So it's the African Americans' attempt to sort of reclaim something from Africa.
Okay, you're saying it's like a contemporary story about race in America. Okay, yes. Well, let's do the Mail now with a story about people who are attracted to intelligence over looks, which is great news for me, because as Lewis said, I'm fat and ugly, apparently. Paul.
I didn't say that. I just said fat.
Oh,
I didn't say
that makes perfect sense. There was a tweet related to that.
No, there wasn't. It's gone. So go on, Paul.
Okay, so I'm learning a new word here. I wasn't totally aware of this, actually. The rise of the sapiosexual, which, by the way, is a sign that you're primarily attracted to intelligence over looks. This is great news. This is great news for people that have spent time learning stuff over brushing their hair, putting their makeup on, whatever. You know, it's why AI will win, by the way. This is top of the slippery slope here, because an AI can quickly mimic this intelligence stuff, and before you know it, women have fallen in love with AIs and they've bypassed us all. Yeah. However, this is good news, isn't it? I think this is good news. I mean, it's too materialistic, this world. It's far too materialistic.
It's great news. And,
this isn't good news.
It's good news if you're smart, and maybe not so much for you, Lewis, but it's good news if you're smart, but not that good looking. But but then again, women have always liked men for things other than looks, like money is a big one. What do you think, Lewis? Go on.
No, first of all, women do not like men for money. They'll tolerate hanging out with them for money, but at the end of and they'll tolerate them for good conversation. But at the end of the day, women like good-looking guys. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to say to the ugly, short, fat, pimply men out there that maybe there's a chance for you. Don't go the incel route. Don't listen to Andrew Tate. Have hope. Don't do bad things.
There is hope, and actually the woman here is called Hope, interesting. She's called Hope Flynn, and she's actually ironically quite good looking, so that could work out. If you're smart, she's good looking, it's great. Because
by the way, I always think these stories...
Go on.
Sorry, no, absolutely, I want to hear your point of view.
Well, no, the reason I was going to say something is that Lewis thinks it's all about looks. So the other night when he told me I was ugly, he made a great point about why it's all about looks. He cited multiple examples and then ended it saying, and you're ugly. So it's a great way to take away all hope from someone. Lewis is black pilled because he's been on the internet, and there's these YouTube videos that say it's only looks that matter. What was your take, Paul?
No, well, clearly it's not. And I think all these stories undermine women. This undermines women's intelligence. Every time it's like women only like... Now, I know there's plenty of evidence, and Lewis, you're right to say this, because it would appear that attractive people like attractive people. You know, if you park that for a moment, at the end of the day, that lasts up until you're about 27. Beyond that point, it all gets a bit wobbly, and you've got to rely on something else.
OK. Well, I feel like you've all taken away my hope. I think that was hope for smart people. That's always... Let's do the Times now. And James Corden wants to come back to Britain. Can we send him to Rwanda, Lewis?
No, because the guy's actually brilliant, and there's one scene that he was in Gavin and Stacey. That's the only scene of Gavin and Stacey that I've seen where he's ordering the Chinese food thing, is perhaps one of the funniest things in British television in the last 20 years. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, of course I do, yeah.
Yeah, that scene. He is amazing. I find him a little bit too cringy and liking everybody. He's sucking up to everybody. He's a great guy. And I don't want him back because it's really sad to be a star in America, and he was a star, and to come back to Britain.
Little old England.
Yeah, and you know the BBC is not going to pay him very much money. If Gary Lineker is the #1 guy and he's being paid 1 point something million pounds, in America, he was making $6 million.
Yeah. What really bothers me, Paul, though, about him is he did a weird pro-vax song, which I'm sure Lewis wouldn't like either. Yeah. He's part of the propaganda establishment. You know, it used to be you had talk show hosts, Colbert, Kimmel, all these people, Seth Meyers. Now they're all propagandists. Even here, Joe Biden's saying, oh, good luck, buddy, and stuff. It's gross, isn't it?
It is gross. He's woke for pay, James Corden. There's absolutely no way that personally he's a woke person. I mean, all the stories that you hear anecdotally about James Corden, he's an awful person. He's less popular than Meghan. Yeah. And that is quite an achievement. Yeah. You raised a really interesting point, which I hadn't considered before. You can separate the art from the person. I know we've had this discussion about Michael Jackson and whoever else.
Yeah.
However, some of the stuff that he's done, particularly with Gavin and Stacey, and he did write with somebody else for Gavin and Stacey, but particularly with Gavin and Stacey, is very funny. And some of the comedy stuff he's written is funny.
All right, well, we've provided balance now. So let's go to the Mirror. And a Dutchman who has fathered 550 children has been banned from donating any more semen. I mean, you know you've gone too far when you're too degenerate for Holland, Paul.
Yeah.
The Dutch. Isn't it, Paul? It looked like Lewis wanted to do it. Someone do the story. It's Lewis, apparently.
It's me. It's me. It's painful for me because speaking of sperm and Louis Schaefer, those two things don't go together anymore.
Thank God.
Anyway, sperm donor. So this guy was a sperm donor and he fathered 550 children in Holland or Netherlands or whatever they call that country, and people were upset about it because it's 550. It's a very relatively small country. It means that. I mean, it means whoever you have, it means that these women and men might be doing their...
OK. What?
They might be doing their sister or their brother. And
OK, we shouldn't have asked. We've got 3 seconds, Paul, to make up any point
He
on
truly is the father of the Netherlands, Nick.
OK. All right, well, that was good. I think it was a good show. But
yeah,
thanks,
great
guys.
show.
Show's nearly over, but we've got to go to the papers one more time and have a look at Saturday's front pages. So, The Guardian, BBC chair quits as row over Tory sleaze grows. The Daily Telegraph, surgeons operate only once every fortnight. The Times has NHS strike poses threat to Great Ormond Street. Daily Mail, M&S and Victoria Beckham back out of tourist tax fight. Still don't know what that one's about. The Eye revealed Putin's top mercenaries are fighting in Sudan. And finally, The Mirror, a new king for our times, which is about the king we've discussed quite a lot tonight. But that's it for tonight. Thanks to Paul and Lewis. Headliners is back tomorrow at 11 p.m. And if you're watching the 5 a.m. repeat, stay tuned for breakfast. But for me, it's good night or good morning, and God bless.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Dubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The coronation is an event that has remained virtually unchanged for 1,000 years.
And we invite you to join us here on GB News for this historic event.
All next week, we'll be talking to you in towns and cities across the country.
Building up to the main event on Saturday.
From pageantry at the palace to unearthing the history of this ancient ritual.
Come celebrate with us.
The coronation of King Charles III, Saturday, May the 6th. Join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good evening, it's 7 o'clock and I am Lawrence Fox. First up, has the cancel culture of the left finally infiltrated the Conservative Party? Andrew Bridgen has been brutally cancelled. Usually it's the Blue Hair Brigade that are terrified of free speech, but have the Conservatives become infected with the woke mind virus as well? Then, stories of the week. Richard Sharp has stepped down from the BBC after yet another report, investigation and cancelling. Prince William is more popular than King Charles amongst the young, and speaking of the young, will they ever be able to buy a house? And finally, and most importantly, I want to hear from you. So send me your views my way at gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at Loz of Fox. That's all coming up after headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Lawrence. Your headlines this evening. The Deputy Prime Minister says the evacuation of British nationals from Sudan will end on Saturday. Oliver Dowden says the decision was made after a decrease in the number of requests for help. So far, British forces have rescued more than 1,500 people.
What we have seen over the past 24 hours or so is a significant decline in the British nationals coming forward. Now, that's what you'd expect. It's what's happened with other countries. So what we're saying now is that people should expect within the next 24 hours, so by 6 o'clock UK time tomorrow, for us to cease those flights.
Richard Sharp has resigned as chairman of the BBC after a report found that he breached the rules for public appointments. The review says he failed to properly disclose his involvement in facilitating an £800,000 loan guarantee for Boris Johnson. Mr Sharp says the breach was inadvertent, but he's quitting to prioritise the interests of the broadcaster. Following calls from Labour that he should have been sacked, the Prime Minister has said that the right process was followed.
This is about doing things properly and professionally, and when concerns are raised, it's right that there is a proper process, an independent process, that we don't prejudge, we allow it to carry on, establish the facts of what happened, reach a conclusion. That's happened. Richard Sharp has resigned, but it's right that we do these things properly and professionally. I think most people will think that's the right thing to do.
Scotland's police watchdog has launched an investigation into the death of a pregnant teacher. The announcement comes after police found the body of her missing partner at a reservoir near Glasgow. Officers had been looking for 36-year-old David Yates after Morel Sturrock was killed at her home on Tuesday. She was 29 weeks pregnant and her unborn baby did not survive. Mr Yates' death is not being treated as suspicious. Unions representing teachers and head teachers in England say they'll take coordinated strike action in the autumn after accusing the government of wanting education on the cheap. The General Secretaries of 4 unions say they'll now work together in their long-running dispute over pay. It's after they rejected the government's offer of a one-off payment of £1,000 and an average pay rise of 4.5% next year. The National Association of Head Teachers says the decision sends a clear signal to the government that the dispute is not going away. Well, health workers belonging to the GMB union have accepted the government's 5% pay offer. GMB officials say they will now vote to accept the offer at a meeting of the NHS Staff Council next week. Health Secretary Steve Barclay says the deal recognises the outstanding job NHS staff do whilst protecting the government's commitment to halve inflation. And the government says the UK is being vigilant in the North Sea after alleged Russian spy ships were seen operating near offshore energy infrastructure. Earlier this month, a joint investigation by European broadcasters claimed that a Russian citizen was part of an operation to map undersea infrastructure. The report found the ship was sailing around the Baltic and North Seas for a month, passing wind farms off the coast of several Scandinavian countries. We're on TV, online, on DAB+ radio and on TuneIn 2. This is GB News. Back now to Lawrence.
We are entering the age of the consensus. As facts are subsumed in feelings and empirical truth becomes inconvenient, irritant to progressive ideology, with nothing rational, reasonable or quantifiable to back up their ever more ludicrous claims, the woke left huddle together and form a mighty consensus. It doesn't matter if their divisive claims are debunked time and time again and that they lose argument after argument. What matters are their feelings and their moral superiority. So what if they are wrong, if they identify as being right? We saw this week when a lady called Marina decided against having a sensible debate with Jacob Rees-Mogg, choosing the drunk girl in a bar who knows her man is on the way out and wants to humiliate him in public one last time approach instead.
We're potentially sitting on trillions of cubic feet of gas underneath us. I'm not. There are very good geological studies showing this.
Do you genuinely believe your lies?
All you say when you disagree is that somebody is lying. But this isn't a proper political argument.
You've been proven time.
It was fine for Marina to be personal, rude and obnoxious because she identified as being virtuous, righteous and superior. The strange thing was, post the Mogg bashing, the wokists started applauding her for destroying Jacob during that interview. They formed a consensus which identified Marina as the victor in the clash. And this is the problem with the progressive left. They don't play by the rules. They smear, cancel, name-call and cry-bully, all in the knowledge that those on the other side of the argument won't sink to their level. They know that if we did abandon critical thinking and reasoned argument, there will be no reconciliation, just the mutually assured destruction that their anarchic pursuit of chaos so ravenously craves. This tactic is becoming ever more prevalent as the damage done by these hug-punching cry-bullies becomes ever more evident. We used to associate these tactics with the hard left, but now they are ever more obvious in the conservative in name only